The underestimation begins. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with murmurs and laughter as representatives of various alien species discussed the recent intelligence report. At the center of the discussion was a small blue-green planet called Earth. The Zarketh Dominion, a ruthless and war-hardened empire, had declared war on this primitive world, expecting a swift and easy victory. Grand General Vorner of the Zarketh Dominion stood before the council, his massive reptilian frame radiating confidence. His dark, scaled armor glistened under the chamber's dim lights. The humans are weak. Their technology is outdated, their weapons are primitive, and their soldiers are nothing but fragile beings who rely on luck rather than skill. This war will not last more than a few days. Laughter erupted across the chamber. The concept of humans, a species with no interstellar war experience, standing against the might of the Zarketh Dominion was absurd. The Dominion had conquered dozens of planets, each falling within hours of invasion. Earth would be no different. A Xelveni ambassador, a tall and elegant being with crystalline skin, leaned forward. "General, why waste resources on such an insignificant species?" she asked, her voice sharp and precise. Vorner smirked, his reptilian fangs glinting under the light. "To make an example of them. No species, no matter how small, should dare defy the Dominion's rule. Besides, their planet holds valuable resources. Once the war is over, Earth will serve as a mining colony, and its people as slaves." The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in murmurs of approval. The decision was final. The Dominion would crush the humans. Days later, a massive fleet of Zarketh warships entered Earth's orbit. Their sheer size and numbers blocked out the sun over entire cities. Billions of humans looked to the sky in fear, watching as metallic monstrosities descended. The invasion had begun. On board the Dominion's flagship, General Vornar watched with amusement as his troops prepared for deployment. His second-in-command, Captain Rasker, stepped forward. "General, shall we send a message demanding surrender?" Vornar chuckled. "Why bother? They will surrender the moment they see our forces." With a wave of his clawed hand, the first wave of Zarketh soldiers descended upon Earth's major cities. Their drop pods crashed into the streets, sending shockwaves through the ground. Armored soldiers, each standing over 8 feet tall, emerged with powerful plasma rifles. The first few minutes of the invasion were exactly as expected. Humans ran in panic. Military forces scrambled to respond, but their weapons were far inferior to the Dominion's advanced technology. Plasma bolts tore through buildings, tanks exploded in fiery infernos, and the streets were littered with the ruins of human defenses. Vornar leaned back in his command chair, watching the chaos unfold through the holographic display. "Pathetic," he muttered. Then something changed. The humans, instead of continuing to flee, began to fight back. And not just with desperation, but with strategy. In one city, a group of human snipers took position in tall buildings, using their knowledge of the terrain to take down enemy soldiers one by one. The Zarketh, confident in their thick armor, had not expected precise projectile-based weapons that could penetrate weak points in their plating. In another sector, human soldiers used hit-and-run tactics, setting up traps and ambushes. They lured enemy squads into narrow alleys before raining explosives from rooftops, turning entire streets into kill zones. Captain Rasker frowned as he observed the battlefield. "General, the humans are resisting harder than expected." Vornar scoffed. "Let them struggle. It won't change their fate." But as the battle continued, the Dominion forces began to take losses, unexpected losses. Human anti-aircraft defenses adapted quickly, shooting down transport ships. Small squads of human commandos infiltrated enemy positions and sabotaged communication lines. Reports came in of entire platoons going missing, their last transmissions filled with confused and panicked shouts. One transmission caught Vorner's attention. A Zarketh officer's voice crackled through the speakers, filled with disbelief. "They are not running. They are hunting us." For the first time, Warner's confidence wavered. The humans were not fighting like a weak, primitive race. They were fighting like predators. And they were just getting started. The battlefield was supposed to be a scene of complete domination. The Zarketh Dominion had crushed countless civilizations before, and Earth was expected to be no different. Yet, something was wrong. General Warner stood in his command chamber, his golden eyes narrowing as he watched the battle unfold on the holographic display. The initial reports had been full of victories. Cities bombarded, human forces scattered. But now, the tide was shifting. A squad of Dominion soldiers had moved into what should have been an abandoned industrial zone in one of Earth's major cities. Their orders were clear: eliminate any remaining resistance. The squad leader, a towering Zarketh warrior, activated his communicator. "This is Unit 47. The area is secure. No human presence detect." A loud crack echoed through the air. The Zarketh soldier collapsed instantly, a hole punched clean through his helmet. The remaining soldiers scrambled for cover, their sensors struggling to locate the enemy. More shots followed, each one precise, each one deadly. A panicked voice came over the Dominion's military channel. "We're taking fire." There. The transmission cut off with a sharp scream. General Warner's claws tightened around the edges of his command chair. He turned to Captain Raskor, his second in command. "How are they doing this?" Raskor hesitated before responding. "The humans are using long-range projectile weapons. Our armor should be resistant, but they are hitting weak points with unnatural accuracy." Warner growled in frustration. "They are insects. They have no advanced targeting systems. How can they match our forces?" Raskor hesitated again. "It's not technology, General. It's skill." The Zarketh soldiers were used to being the superior predators on any battlefield. Their tactics were simple: overwhelm, crush, dominate. But humans fought differently. In another sector, Dominion troops patrolled through a ruined city. They moved carefully, their weapons scanning for any sign of life. The humans had gone silent for hours, and that was more terrifying than a full-scale battle. A Zarketh officer turned to his soldiers. "Stay close. They are hiding like cowards." A faint clicking sound echoed from above. One of the soldiers looked up, his 4 red eyes widening in horror. A figure in dark combat gear was perched on the remains of a broken building. A human soldier with a sniper rifle aimed directly at them. "Ambush," the officer roared. But it was too late. Explosions erupted from the ground as preset human traps detonated, sending flames and shrapnel through the air. Before the surviving Zarketh could react, figures moved through the smoke, humans, fast and precise, firing short, controlled bursts that cut through their ranks. One Dominion warrior swung his massive plasma cannon toward a human, expecting them to run. Instead, the human ducked under the barrel, jammed a blade between the warrior's armor plates, and fired a shot directly into the exposed flesh. The Zarketh warrior collapsed, his last thought filled with disbelief. This wasn't a battle. This was a hunt. Back on the flagship, the reports continued to come in. Entire units wiped out, patrols disappearing without a trace, Dominion soldiers too terrified to move through human-occupied zones. General Warner slammed his fist onto the control panel, his sharp claws scratching the surface. "Enough of this," he roared. Raskor stepped forward carefully. "General, the humans are adapting at an alarming rate. They are using their terrain, setting traps, striking in small, unpredictable groups. We underestimated them." Warner's eyes burned with fury. "Then we changed tactics. Send in the heavy assault units. Bomb their cities to dust. If they want to play this game, we will show them true war." Raskor hesitated for a moment before nodding. "As you command." The Dominion's war machine was about to unleash its full power. But they still didn't understand. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and they were just getting started. The Dominion forces moved swiftly, deploying their heaviest war machines onto the battlefield. Massive walkers, towering over the ruined cities, stomped forward, their plasma cannons glowing with deadly energy. Squadrons of attack drones soared through the sky, scanning for any sign of human resistance. The air was thick with the hum of alien war engines, drowning out the eerie silence of the abandoned streets. General Vornar watched from his flagship, satisfaction creeping into his expression. The humans had fought well, but no primitive species could stand against the full force of the Dominion's military. The ground assault was now unstoppable. The city would burn, and the humans would finally know their place. The order was given. The walkers opened fire, their plasma cannons sending waves of destruction through buildings and streets. The drones rained down energy blasts, turning once thriving areas into smoldering ruins. The Dominion soldiers advanced, weapons ready, prepared to finish off whatever human forces remained. But something was wrong. The humans should have been retreating, scattering, surrendering. Instead, they were nowhere to be found. The scanners picked up no movement, no heat signatures. The battlefield was quiet, too quiet. It was unnatural, unsettling. The Dominion soldiers, trained to dominate with overwhelming force, hesitated. Their instincts, dulled by countless easy victories, whispered that something was very wrong. Then the first explosion struck. A hidden mine, buried deep beneath the rubble, detonated under one of the massive walkers. The ground shook violently as the machine toppled, its legs blown apart in an instant. Smoke and fire erupted into the sky, and before the Dominion forces could react, another explosion followed, then another. The battlefield became a death trap, the ground itself turning against the invaders. Snipers opened fire from unseen positions, picking off Dominion commanders with brutal precision. The heavy armor of the Zarketh warriors, once thought to be impenetrable, had weak points the humans had already studied. Each shot found its mark. One by one, the Dominion soldiers fell, confusion and fear spreading through their ranks. Panic set in. The attack drones, meant to provide air support, began malfunctioning. A strange signal jammed their targeting systems, causing them to spin out of control and crash into buildings. The Dominion's own weapons were turning against them, their technology disrupted by human interference. The carefully planned assault was falling apart. In the chaos, a squad of Dominion soldiers took cover behind a collapsed structure, their weapons shaking in their hands. One of them, a veteran warrior, tried to reach command. "We are under heavy attack." The humans have. A shadow moved behind them. Before the soldier could finish his transmission, a blade sliced through his armor, silencing him instantly. The others turned in horror, but it was too late. The humans were already among them, striking fast and without mercy. The last thing they saw was the cold, determined eyes of their attackers. From the flagship, General Vornar listened as more and more distress calls came in. Units were vanishing. Entire squads wiped out in minutes. The mighty war machines of the Dominion were being picked apart like prey. The battle, which should have been a massacre in their favor, was becoming something else. A nightmare. For the first time in his long military career, General Vornar felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. This was not a war against a weaker enemy. This was not a battle they could win through sheer force. The humans were fighting on their own terms, and the Dominion was losing. The Dominion's forces were in disarray. What should have been a swift and overwhelming victory had turned into a bloodbath, but not for the humans. The battlefield, once a place of total control, had become a nightmare for the invaders. Every street, every ruined building, and every shadow concealed a new danger. The humans had not run. They had not surrendered. They had lured the Dominion in, letting them believe in their own superiority, only to strike when they least expected it. General Vornar stood at the command deck of his warship, his eyes locked on the holographic battlefield display. Red markers, indicating his troops, were vanishing one by one. He clenched his fists. How? How was this happening? The humans had no advanced technology, no overwhelming firepower. By all logic, they should have already been wiped out. But instead, his soldiers were being hunted. On the ground, Dominion warriors moved cautiously now. Their once confident march had turned into a desperate attempt to regroup. They communicated in hushed voices, scanning every rooftop, every pile of debris, and every alleyway for signs of movement. Fear had begun to spread among them, something they had never felt against a lesser species before. Then the next wave of human strikes began. It wasn't an all-out attack. It wasn't a direct confrontation. It was something worse. One by one, Dominion soldiers started disappearing. Isolated patrols found themselves cut off, their comms failing, their support squads never arriving. Some were found later, silent, lifeless, their weapons untouched. Others were never found at all. The humans weren't just killing them, they were breaking them. The sound of distant gunfire echoed through the ruined city. A group of Dominion elites, heavily armored and trained for close combat, took position inside a fortified structure. They were the best of the best, warriors who had crushed rebellions and conquered countless worlds. Yet, as they waited, gripping their weapons tightly, they realized something terrifying. It was silent. Too silent. The usual sounds of war, explosions, the hum of drones, the mechanical march of walkers, were gone. The battle had not stopped, but it had shifted. The Dominion was no longer hunting. They were being hunted. Then the first shot rang out. One of the elites dropped, a clean hole through his helmet. No warning, no sound of a rifle, just death. The others scattered, their discipline cracking. They tried to locate the sniper, but the humans had mastered the art of vanishing. Another shot. Another elite fell. Panic took hold. One of them activated a heat scanner, trying to detect movement. Nothing. A whisper crackled over their comms. At first, they thought it was one of their own. Then they realized, no, it was something else. A human voice. "We see you." The remaining elites bolted. These were warriors who had never retreated in their entire service to the Dominion. But now, fear drove them. They ran, desperate to escape the invisible enemy. They never made it. The last one standing gasped as a shadow loomed behind him. A blade flashed, and then there was nothing. From the command ship, General Vornar received the last desperate transmission from the elite unit. Then, static. His heart pounded. He had underestimated the humans. The Dominion had underestimated them. This was no ordinary enemy. This was a species that refused to break. And now, they were proving to the Dominion why that was a fatal mistake. General Vornar paced back and forth on the command deck of his warship, his claws clicking against the polished floor. His soldiers were being slaughtered, not in a glorious battle, not in a fair fight, but in the shadows, one by one, like prey. His forces had gone from conquerors to the hunted. He turned to his tactical officer, his voice sharp. "What is happening down there? How are these humans doing this?" The officer, a younger Dominion strategist, swallowed hard. His display screens were filled with distorted comms, missing patrols, and casualty reports. "Sir, the humans, they are using the environment. They are ambushing our units, isolating them, taking them out before we can respond. We can't even locate where they are striking from." Vornar slammed his fist against the console. "Enough. Deploy the heavy walkers, flatten the city, burn every hiding place to the ground. If they have no cover, they will have nowhere to run." The officer hesitated. "Sir, we've already tried artillery bombardments. The humans just disappear before the strikes land, and when the smoke clears, they return like ghosts." Vornar's jaw tightened. He had never faced an enemy like this before. The Dominion had crushed entire civilizations, broken empires, and enslaved countless worlds. Yet here they were, struggling against a species that was supposed to be weak. On the battlefield, Dominion forces prepared for a final push. The ground rumbled as massive war machines, equipped with heavy plasma cannons, rolled forward. This was their ultimate response. Overwhelming firepower, unstoppable force. The humans couldn't hide from this. Or so they thought. The first explosion came from below. A war machine, standing 3 stories tall, suddenly collapsed as its legs were blown apart by hidden charges. A second later, another one was hit, then another. Traps. The humans had been preparing. They had been studying the Dominion's tactics, setting up their battlefield, forcing their enemies into the perfect position. And now, they were striking. Before the Dominion could recover, human forces launched a counterattack. Not in a traditional battle line, not with overwhelming numbers, but with precision and brutality. Snipers picked off officers. Hit-and-run teams struck supply lines. Command posts were overrun in the dead of night, their defenders never even getting the chance to fight back. The Dominion soldiers, trained to fight in large-scale formations, were being torn apart by an enemy they couldn't predict. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were dismantling the invasion. General Vornar watched in disbelief as his red markers on the battlefield display. His own troops continued to vanish. It was a massacre, not of the humans, but of his army. The realization hit him like a physical blow. They had made a terrible mistake. They had thought the humans were weak. But weakness had nothing to do with the battlefield. And now, the Dominion was paying the price. The Dominion forces were in complete disarray. What had started as a simple invasion had turned into a nightmare. The humans had stopped fighting like an outmatched enemy and had begun hunting like predators. General Vorner's command ship hovered above the battlefield, trying to regain control of the situation. His officers scrambled to make sense of the reports flooding in. Missing units, ambushed patrols, entire battalions wiped out without a trace. The humans had turned the entire battlefield into a trap, and now the Dominion soldiers were falling into it, one by one. Vorner slammed his fist against the control panel. Where is the enemy? Why can't we locate them? One of his lieutenants, a nervous young strategist, hesitated before answering. Sir, the humans are using stealth tactics, guerrilla warfare. They don't engage head-on. They hit us when we least expect it, then vanish before we can retaliate. Vorner's eyes narrowed. Cowards. The lieutenant shook his head. No, sir. Not cowards. They're predators. They're using our own arrogance against us. The general turned away, his fists clenched. He had led countless invasions before. He had crushed rebellions, burned cities to the ground, and enslaved entire populations. But never, not once, had he encountered an enemy that refused to fight the way he expected. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Dominion's remaining forces were desperately trying to regroup. They had been trained for direct combat, for overwhelming their enemies with sheer firepower. But the humans refused to fight that way. Instead, they moved like shadows. Dominion soldiers huddled together in small camps, fear creeping into their ranks. Every rustling sound in the darkness made them flinch. Every distant explosion made their hearts race. They were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. A squad of Dominion troopers marched through the ruined city streets, their weapons raised. Their leader, Captain Cyril, kept his eyes on the crumbling buildings around them. Every step felt like walking into an ambush. Then, without warning, gunfire erupted from above. The first soldier dropped before he could even react. The second was taken out by a single, precise shot to the head. The squad scrambled for cover, but the humans were already moving. A shadow darted through the smoke. A knife flashed. Another Dominion soldier fell. Cyril barely had time to turn before something struck him from behind. A human soldier had appeared out of nowhere, moving with terrifying speed. He felt a sharp pain in his side as he collapsed to the ground. His vision blurred. The last thing he saw before blacking out was the human warrior staring down at him, not with hatred, but with cold calculation. Vornar watched the battle unfold from his warship, his mind racing. This was more than just a resistance. This was annihilation. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were proving a point. The Dominion had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The tide of the war was shifting. The Dominion forces, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves on the brink of collapse. The humans, the so-called weaklings of the galaxy, were proving themselves to be the most ruthless and cunning fighters the Dominion had ever encountered. General Vornar stood in front of the massive viewport of his command ship, watching the chaos unfold below. His fleet, once a symbol of unchallenged power, was now in retreat. What had started as a simple mission to conquer a small, insignificant planet had turned into the Dominion's worst nightmare. His officers scrambled to find solutions, but every attempt was futile. The humans had anticipated their every move, using guerrilla tactics and ambushes that left the Dominion troops in constant fear. Each victory for the humans seemed to come out of nowhere. Vornar clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his failure. He had underestimated them. He had believed that humanity would be easy to crush, like so many others before them. But they were different. They fought without honor, without rules, and they were winning. On the surface, the remaining Dominion soldiers were desperately trying to hold their ground. Their numbers had dwindled, and morale was at an all-time low. They had come to Earth thinking they were invincible, but now they faced an enemy who refused to be beaten. In one of the last strongholds, Captain Zoreth stood with his squad, surveying the battlefield. The Dominion had dug in, hoping to buy time for reinforcements that would never arrive. They could hear the humans moving in the distance, their footsteps like whispers in the wind. "Get ready," Zoreth growled. "They'll be on us any second." But as he spoke, the first human soldier appeared. He was alone, seemingly unarmed. Zoreth raised his weapon, ready to open fire. But before he could, the human raised a hand, signaling for peace. Zoreth hesitated. He had heard of humans taking prisoners, but he wasn't sure if this was a trick. "Come on, shoot him," one of his soldiers urged. "He's alone." Zoreth shook his head. "No, wait." The human stepped closer, his eyes locked on Zoreth's. There was no fear in them, only calm resolve. Then, to Zoreth's shock, the human spoke. "You lost," the soldier said. "And now you'll pay the price for underestimating us." Zoreth's heart skipped a beat. The human's voice was calm, but there was a deadly edge to it. The moment felt like it had frozen in time. They had lost. The realization hit him harder than any weapon. And then the human struck. With one swift motion, the soldier disarmed Zoreth and sent him sprawling to the ground. Zoreth tried to fight back, but the human was too fast. He pinned the captain to the dirt, his knee on Zoreth's chest. The captain's last thoughts were a mixture of disbelief and regret. How could they have been so blind? How could they have underestimated a species that fought so ferociously, with so much cunning? As the last remnants of the Dominion forces were wiped out, General Vornar received a transmission. His fleet had been decimated. The humans had won. They had proven that even the most advanced military could be outmatched by sheer determination and brutality. They had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated. And for the Dominion, it was too late to turn back. They had made the mistake of underestimating humanity, and now they were paying the ultimate price.